Angela Haas was born in Colorado Springs, Colorado, and spent 15 years of her career as a buyer and manager for an art gallery, the last 9 years as professor of communication, and now she writes full-time about superheroes and romance. She enjoys not she enjoys not camping. I like camping, so you enjoy not camping, salty snacks, and soft blankets. Angela is also the co-host of the Author Next Door podcast, which you will find the podcast link in the chat. Um, uh, what do we have? HTTPS, blah, 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 the authornextdoor.com. And
I
we
just put
also,
our store link, so I'm going to reference the
okay,
stores that we own, and if anyone wants a visual, that they can click on that link. So,
okay, all right, that's great. And tonight you're going to be talking about selling your books in person and
mhm.
approaching indie bookstore owners. I love that. I had my books when I was in Oregon, and they were placed in Oregon. So I had my books in a local bookstore there. And that was kind of fun too, because every once in a while she would have a bunch of us authors in for a little mini book fair. So that was fun. Okay.
Yeah.
And Angela, you have a presentation for us. Is that correct?
Yes, so I did give this presentation at Superstar Writing Seminar. So I may skip quickly through a few things, but do you post? Is there a place where I can share the slides if people want to look at those later? Or,
Well, I will be uploading this to my YouTube channel, so if you want
okay,
to
so
give
they'll
me a
have it.
link
Yeah,
to the slides, I can do that.
perfect. Yeah, that sounds great.
All right, so you can share your screen and take it away if you like.
All right. You'll just have to let me know if people have questions. I think we'll make the presentation, and then I will stop in different blocks to ask for questions. There's also built-in activities that we did in person, so we'll just do the best through Zoom. But I truly believe, and this is my style when I was a communication professor, is that we learn by doing. And so I can talk at you all I want, but it's better if we can apply those concepts to an activity. So we will do that. But let me pull this up, start my slideshow. And wait, I think I need to go back out because I need to see my notes. And you'll see the notes as well. But basically, um, oh, it's actually also giving some subtitles. I hope that's not going to bother anyone. um, but I created this presentation because I was drawing on my experiences as a book buyer. So I
Excuse me, if you click on your CC down
want
here,
me to
I
turn that
think,
off.
yeah,
Okay,
there
there we
you
go.
go.
That's much better. Um, so I was a book buyer as well because we have a gift shop with a mini bookstore, and we were featuring all kinds of titles, including fiction authors, local fiction authors, and but I would meet with Penguin and Hachette and Little Brown and all the presses. I would meet with their reps and pick out books all day, and so I have that experience as well. But what I want to get us to do today is think more like a retailer because we're so focused sometimes on selling books online. We put out the ebook maybe and that's it. But there are so many other sales opportunities for in-person sales if we can harness those skills. Okay, so just quick a little bit more about me. I've been working in a brick and mortar retail since 1994. I mentioned I was a book art buyer and merchandiser, and then I went on to teach at the University of Colorado, Colorado Springs. There's our store, there's one of them. We actually have 8 different other retail boutiques. Some are women's boutiques that sell clothing and gift. This has everything. It has a Starbucks in there, a restaurant, art, gift, you name it. So here's what to expect. I'm pretty much putting you through a sales training. It's the boot camp that I put my staff through when I was managing a staff of incoming salespeople. And you're going to kind of receive that same training and merchandising as they did, a little bit tailored to authors. We want to strengthen your sales. We want to go through a little merchandising 101 because it's not enough to just say, "Ooh, I like my book cover." We want to know, how is it going to look on a shelf? How does your book feel? And then we're going to go through some community building, which means like talking about in-person events, networking, things like that. And then just reading from my notes here, sometimes we get so conditioned into thinking we've got to sell through Facebook or TikTok or Amazon, run ads, but you will make more money sometimes in a single event by selling in person than sometimes running Facebook ads over time. So if we can harness those skills, it'll lead to good things. Okay, sales training. So, what I do with my staff is I try to get them to understand the psychology behind selling. You are really appealing to the ego, to the emotional needs of the customer. And don't books do that anyway? When we are reaching for a book cover or we are drawn to a book cover, it's because it's kicking off some emotional thing for us. It's breaking through our subconscious. And so there's all kinds of things retailers do, right? To appeal to your subconscious. It is subliminal messaging, and that's what we're trying to harness. So I don't know if anyone's aware of this, but we set up our store like this too. Shoppers tend to shop to the right when entering a store because most people are right-handed. So it's leading to this natural inclination to turn right upon entering a space. It's called the invariant right in retail psychology. So retailers strategically place high demand items on the right side to maximize customer exposure and potential purchases. Some of you may be saying, well, why would I need to know this? It's just another way to show that how subliminal like a shopping experience is. We almost don't even know we're doing it when we do it. We're just there, we're reaching for things. Um, so in Targets, the Starbucks is on the right hand side. And the theory is that if you have a snack or coffee, you'll stay in the store longer. Um, so anyway, this all helps you build the foundation as how shoppers think, especially if you go to an event and you get to pick where your booth space is. You probably want to be in the door to the right in the beginning. So people kind of come in and they go to the right in an event space and they see your book first, right? When you're selling online, the trick is to get people to stop scrolling and to look at your post or video. So there's more psychology with selling online, but it's different than selling in person. Here's what I'm going to kind of skip over. I went really like deep, but this was the man who created the sales funnel. It's E. St. Elmo Lewis. And the AIDA sales funnel is what I teach all my salespeople because it's a way, especially when you're selling in person, to first hook your potential customer, keep them engaged, and close the sale. It's kind of what we do with a blurb, right? Your blurb is supposed to be doing this on your book. There has to be a hook to separate your book from the rest. And that's what the blurb also does, right? It gets the attention of the reader. And when you're in an in person sales event, you are standing maybe behind your table, or your book is just doing this on the shelf because the cover is going to be getting someone's attention, right? So when you get your customer's attention, that's great, but you have to make it to the next step of the sales funnel, which is maintaining interest. You want to gauge and keep their interest. And what I would tell salespeople is, throw out a little fact. And this is more, again, if you are selling somewhere in person, if your book is on the shelf, your blurb should be doing all these things. So on the shelf, your blurb gets someone attention with a hook line. And then the second part probably needs to gauge, keep their interest so they keep reading. And then sooner or later, your customer is going to make a decision. And that's why the blurb is effective, the cover is effective on the shelf. But when you're talking to someone, you need to engage with them in a way to see what their interests are, to throw out a few fun things about your book, and then see if they're interested. If they're not, you're going to be able to tell that right away. And we're going to talk a little bit about body language later, but that's part of the sales funnel, the decision making process. How do we get people to close and make the decision? And then there's action. And a lot of times, if you're in an in person event, to get them to close the sale, you maybe offer a little freebie, a book magnet, a reader magnet, a little sticker with purchase, something that entices the customer to finally like close the deal. So I don't know if I'm going to go through all of this. This was more for the conference. I went a lot deeper into um, the sales like tactics. But the one thing I do want to touch on is um, when you are at an in person event, this could be a book signing you have at a local library, at a local brewery, at a cafe. Maybe you go to a conference like Superstars or Author Nation. They always have a place where authors can sell their books. So you are at your table or in a booth. And people are walking by, and it's just like fishing. You're trying to like cast a net with the visuals on your table and get people to come to you. Now sometimes it feels a little intimidating to try to get people to stop by your table, and that's where I really stress like trying to look at nonverbal cues, reading the room, because I've had some authors, like, if I was walking by, they really pounce on you, without really even trying to gauge whether the customer is like interested or not, or we get excited and we put too much out too fast and it actually drives the person away. So um as we get to a couple slides later, we're going to talk about nonverbal cues you can use to just really gauge what kind of relationship that customer wants with you. Okay, so what about your books? Part of getting a potential customer or reader's attention means answering the question to start the conversation. So, sales opportunities are everywhere if we can answer this question: what do you write? Um, how would you answer that question if I'm just throwing that out there? If I just was meeting you for the first time and saying, what do you write? I don't know if they're allowed to answer or you can post your comments in chat, but
I'll answer.
yeah,
I write
answer.
historical romance based in the United States during the War of 1812.
Okay, perfect. Wow, that's interesting. Actually, I would be like, oh, tell me more. It's like the classic elevator pitch that you see in, business, communication classes and things like that. When someone says, what do you do or what do you write? You almost have like 20 seconds to answer to pique their interest. And that's the first part of selling in person, is really nailing down your answer to that question. When you have a concise answer like you did, Paula Judith, that leads to deeper interest. You want to throw out just enough without like overwhelming the person, so that they will ask more questions like, oh, tell me more, or where can I buy your books, or that sounds really fun. So when I was answering that question, I I would say I write about older women superheroes. Yes, there's all kinds of people say there's better words for older women, but On the fly, that's what I was saying. And then I would say, picture if all the Avengers were older women to start with. Now, as soon as I said that, people would be like, oh, tell me more. Is it perfect pitch? No. But it was enough where I could speak it naturally so that people were more interested in what I had to say further. So I think we get bogged down into feeling like we've got to rehearse things and have things perfected and edited, and it doesn't have to be that way. Sometimes just starting the conversation is answering that question in a meaningful way. It doesn't have to be fancy. It just has to get someone's attention. And sometimes you only need one sentence. Yeah,
I want to interject something here. I used to partner with a man who wrote um, uh, historical fiction, not romance, just historical
right.
fiction. And we would usually share a table. And more than once, I saw people stop in front of him, pick up his book, uh, look at the blurb on the back, and they would start a conversation. Before you knew it, the author was telling them all about the book. Well, by the time he was through telling them all about the book, he always got the book placed down. That's very interesting. And the people would walk away because they
Hmm.
felt that they knew what the book was about. So I
Right.
really like what you're saying about giving just enough information because if we give too much, we might lose the sale there.
You start to lose people, and that's why this piece falls under, the previous slide here. What you're doing is you're prospecting. Think of it like that. You're trying to figure out who a potential customer is. You don't know if they are yet. But that's why if you can answer this question, if someone says, what do you write? You have just enough to gauge interest. Because I've been around authors and I've done this too. The reason I say some of these things is because there are mistakes I used to make. We get really excited to talk about our books, right? We're just, oh, finally someone's asking about my book. And then I've done this, but I've seen authors where they just go deep diving, like you said, going down these rabbit holes and all this stuff. And like, I could tell the person was like trying to escape. And when you get to like the body language piece, like people, when they're like, uh-huh, they may be nodding, but their whole body is kind of subconsciously turning away from you, that means they're done listening. And there's a few times when I saw that happening and I just, okay, stop talking because I could tell that person was just finished listening. So, yeah, try to narrow it down to one sentence. In one sentence, with your voice, not rehearsed, what do you write? Just tell me a couple things. And then um, that will lead to deeper conversations. But my last thing here is not all conversations follow a template. So it should feel natural. Um, how do you keep people interested in what you're saying? So maybe, they're interested, but you're not quite sure. Um, you want to ask questions, like get them to tell you, what do you like to read? Maybe they wandered over to your book booth and they haven't asked you what your book is about, but you can say, hey, what do you like to read? Or do you usually read romance or do you read thrillers? And if they say no, then you have a split second to decide, well, do I want to throw out one more thing to see if they might be interested? Or if they're not, they're not. And then you don't need to spend too much time with them. But always ask them questions, get them talking about them. Here's a really important thing, just in general, that I try to help authors with. Selling is subliminal messaging. I'm going to keep saying that this whole time, but you're planting little seeds, right? And I've heard authors throw something out, but they start to speak negatively about their skills or their book. Well, I published the thing. It's my first book. It's not that great, but I like it. But the beginning's a little slow. So if you can get past that, and that's not the best example, but sometimes we don't always celebrate our own accomplishments. Publishing a book is hard. If you've ever gotten that far and passed through those gates, you have already won the prize and you've made it farther than a lot of people do. Now, my first book is not as great as the fifth one I'm working on. I can tell how much I've learned. But even my first book has a place. I did work hard on it, I did edit it. So talk it up. Don't speak down because it plants a seed in your customer's head like, oh, maybe this isn't very good. So just celebrate what you love. And honestly, your potential customer hasn't read the book, something that you may be a little self conscious about, they may not notice and they may love. So, just if there's anything to take away from this, is celebrate your wins, wear that gold star, and don't speak down about your book or your writing. So, this piece is really important. This is nonverbal communication. Just as a little I put all my salespeople through this because customers will tell you what kind of shopper they are. If you are at an in person event, you will have all kinds of people. You'll have the extroverted person who actually wants to talk your ear off. You're going to have someone shy that as soon as you say hi to them, they sort of almost shrink a little bit. So showing interest, you can tell if someone's really interested, it just in general in what you're saying, they're leaning forward, they're making eye contact, their head tilts because they're taking in information and processing it, and they have sort of a relaxed posture because they're really into everything you're saying. It's the same with a potential customer who you're talking about your book. If they're like nodding slightly, leaning forward, making that eye contact, you really got them. And that may be too the point to dial back slightly because you really don't want to lose them by going too far and giving every single detail. If they're not as interested, they're going to turn their body away. They may have sort of a blank expression where you feel like they're not totally listening. Starting to glance at anyone who takes out their phone when you're talking to them is not interested in what you're saying. I'm sorry. I mean, not all the time, but I'm just saying, like, if you're really interested in someone, you're never going to like take out your phone and look at that mid conversation. But I've been at a conference trying to sell my book, and a person looked at their watch, and I was like, "Okay, I'm gonna let you go," because they weren't interested. They were getting bored. Um, so those are some little things to say, like, and if you've got someone who's in the not interested phase, we don't know why they're not interested. It may be that they're shy and they feel like they're on the spot. They're really introverted. They don't want to talk. They just want to get information about your book. So if you are behind the table, throw out a little fact like, hi, do you read romance? And if they don't look at you and make eye contact and just say, even if they say yes, but they're still not like engaging, you can just say, well, hey, check out my books, take a little sticker and let me know if you have questions and leave them alone because they really want to just browse and take everything in on their own. If someone comes up and you throw out a little fact, do you read romance? And someone says yes, and they seem engaged and making eye contact, that's your cue to go forward. So there's so much more that we could talk about nonverbal communication. I used to teach classes on nonverbal communication, and it was really good in the classroom for me because it could always tell when someone was watching a cat video on their laptop instead of taking notes because we have so many micro expressions that fire when we're watching something fun. And so I could always tell. But it really helps you as a salesperson to take a moment and get some nonverbal cues from your customer. Okay, these are some tips for action. So this is where people buy your book. Here's something I always advise. You should always keep contact cards, books, press kit with you at all times. Even if you're just out running errands, you may run into someone, you may be waiting in line at the post office, and someone you get to talking or whatever, have a business card with you, just a contact card with your website, with a picture of your book on it, Just something that you can leave behind if you want. I sold a book to my dental hygienist when I got my teeth cleaned because, of course, they always talk to you when your mouth is full of everything, but I managed to share what I was writing and they bought a book and I had a card. So I looked and I had an order like within the hour after I got home. So always keep something with you. Always, did you get a book where it's kind of from Amazon, the pages are a little wrinkled or something? Keep it in your car and give it away. There's always sales opportunities like this that can lead to other things. But you should definitely think about that, especially if you're at an in-person event. And you should always ask for a review, but offer something in return. Are they an author that you could support? Um, you can exchange reviews. So there's always ways to, when you sell a book, to keep that customer engaged from now on. Okay, so this was an activity I did live in person. And I don't, we can do it, or if people just stay on mute, if you want to like enter your little pitch in chat, like how you would you answer the question, what do you write? Or what's your book about? I don't know if anyone wants to do that, or if people are answering, Paul, I can't see the chat, so.
Yeah, I'm looking at the chat. We have a lot of non-communicative people here.
Okay. That's totally fine. But
Sorry to interrupt. I missed the question. My
The question was, what do you write? Try and boil that down to one sentence. Earlier, I had given the example, I write historical romance based in the United States during the War of 1812. So, can you say something like that about your book? One sentence, what's it about? My book is a murder mystery complicated by romance. Ooh.
ooh, see, so intriguing. That's all you need. And people like, because I love that it's complicated by romance. Because, yeah,
Yeah,
that's
romance
fantastic.
complicates everything.
It does. I write romance. I know how complicated it is. Oh my gosh. So, yeah, just keep that in mind because you just never know where sales opportunities or how you network and what can come from that. I started going into a local bookstore and bought a book and a piece of art in Scottsdale, where I am. And I just so happened to write a romance about Scottsdale. It's like a little travel guide because all the restaurants are real places that I love. And from that small contact, they now carry my books because I started a conversation because I said I'm an author just in passing to the person trying to sell me a piece of art. And they said, what do you write? And I answered, they said, we'd love to sell your book.
Yeah,
And
okay.
they've reordered 6 times.
Oh,
So, yeah.
obviously it sells well. So Megan Elmendorf said, my book is a paranormal historical romance based on Irish mythology. So that's
Ooh,
very interesting. I
that's really
interviewed
interesting.
Megan Elmendorf for the May Writing Romance Mastery Summit, so she will have some nice things to share with you then.
That's great. That's great. I love that. I want to read that book. See, now I'm a customer. Okay, any more questions about this section? I realize I kind of went fast because I want to get into merchandising and color theory, which is really fun. So, any
Ooh, yeah,
questions
I
about
like
that?
color theory. I have done a little bit of research on that,
Hmm.
and it is very fun.
Yeah. Okay. I will just. All right, this is merchandising 101, the art of making things pretty in your store. And I want you to begin to think of yourself as a small business owner. If you had a store, what would it be? And I'm going to return to that question later. So, retail merchandising is an umbrella term that encompasses selection, placement, and display of products within the store. Your book cover and branding are important to your sales, i.e., your personal bookstore, right? Research your comps and take a walk through your local bookstore. So when we say research your comps, I mean, I'm assuming everyone knows that, but just in case there's someone who doesn't, it just means that when you're thinking about a title and a cover, you want to like put in the genre you're writing in and see what other book covers look like. And there's a reason they look like they do. But the other thing I like to do is walk through your local bookstore. What books are you drawn to on the shelf? Why were you drawn to them? Is it the color? Is it the feeling? Is it the mood? Why were you drawn to them? There's a way, it's a subliminal message that that book cover is communicating to you, but see what speaks to you, and sometimes you can put that into practice. So, what I teach everyone is a little bit about color theory. Color actually influences 85% of shoppers' decisions. For instance, a study published in the journal Management Decision supports the theory that color is critical for conveying information. The study says that people make decisions within 90 seconds of their first impression of a product, which is true. And color alone contributes up to 90% of the information that forms the decision. This suggests that marketers must understand how the colors they use affect consumers' ability to differentiate products and identify brands. And research shows, like I said, that color influences 85% of shoppers' decisions. Each color invokes a feeling and has meaning. That's what color theory is. What's the most popular color? You can see it on the side. It's blue.
Blue?
Mhm. That is the most popular color. Um, so when we think about branding, this is the color wheel. This is part of color theory. So some colors may not look together. Some colors complement, some colors compete. But if your colors don't look good together or aren't working, they're not creating the proper emotional response. So, colors that are on the opposite sides of the color wheel pair well: blue and orange, purple and yellow, red and green. Those are complementary colors. Monochromatic schemes, various shades of one color, light to dark and blue, that balances the subtle and conventional color combination, giving a harmonious look. Analogous colors, colors next to each other on the wheel, like green, green, and blue, that to prevent this from becoming overwhelming, select one dominant color and use the rest as accents. So there's all, I mean, this could be a whole hour discussion with the color wheel and color theory, but some colors, again, they don't work well together. They will compete and therefore repel someone and therefore cause problems when someone's like when you're trying to sell something. So some of these colors, um, these are the colors technically that they're saying don't look very good together because they're competing. But everyone has an eye. Some people might be saying, I like black and navy, but technically, according to the color wheel, that's not harmonious. Okay. So what there's a reason why there's color themes of the best-selling books, and they have a like certain genres are usually using some of the same colors. And there's a reason for it because the color is conveying an emotion and an emotional response. And sometimes people are just drawn to the cover and they kind of know more what the book is about before they even see the title or read the blurb. So there's a reason why yellow and orange according to color theory and the color according to color theory, yellow and orange means happiness, excitement, energy, optimism, which means that's why a lot of romance books, right, have bright orange colors. Now there's a lot of like pinks and blues, everyone's favorite color. So you'll see a lot of blue in romance. But these sort of bright, happy colors along with pink, that's why you see so much romance in these colors, because we're trying to convey through the color also what the book is about. So another color on very popular in a popular book genre is black, and black is power, sophistication, mystery, elegance. That's according to color theory. That's what black means. So here we have billionaire romance covers, right? Look at the common themes. They're dark, lots of black, and that's because we're conveying power, sophistication, mystery, and elegance, right? So red is like sometimes passion, but also rage and danger. And that's why look at the thrillers. You also have bold typography, but you have a lot of red in the titles, in the backgrounds. And so that's why a lot of thrillers will have red and other bold colors on them. So I use Pinterest all the time for finding colors that are harmonious. And you just have to find, like, if you go to color palettes, that'll tell you like different colors that you might not think to pair. But if you're thinking about your book cover, you might want to like find things like this, and then you can convey that to your cover designer. If you're designing your cover, do some research on what colors actually mean, different colors. I know green is like healing and comfort, and green is just a color of those kinds of feelings. You don't see a ton of green book colors because sometimes we're trying to convey other things. But anyway, Pinterest, and even if you go to your local paint store, they'll have color palettes, that those samples that you can take. I've taken those sometimes to help me. But what I want you to take away from this is that merchandising, when we're merchandising, we're trying to create a, a product on a shelf that's shoppable, that's enticing, that people want to gravitate to. It's something you need to consider when you're choosing your title, your book cover, and the typography and how everything looks, right? Because it's part of your merchandising. And sometimes we're so focused on what our cover looks in a tiny thumbnail that'll be on Amazon, but it's actually a different experience when you see your cover as a physical copy. And it's even more different when you see it on the shelf next to other things. It's still got to coincide with the other colors and feeling of your genre. So that's what we think about when I want you to think like a retailer. Think about the merchandising piece of your brand in that way. Okay, so this was a really fun activity I did to just get people to think on their feet. We can do this, or we don't have to. You could answer in chat. But this is a sales 101 activity, and it's called Sell Me This Pen. And the theory with this is, if you can sell me your pen or make your pen seem interesting, you can sell anything. So what I did have in the in-person piece of this was I had people hold up their pen and give me a sales pitch and try to make it interesting. So if you would like to do this, that's great. If we want to just skip over it, that's fine. But it's an exercise that helps you think simply. How can we make the most basic object even sound like something a person can't live without? And that's how we also need to think about our books when we're thinking about selling in person, the merchandising of it. How are you going to create your book in its physical form to be something someone can't live without? Judith, Paula Judith, do you want to sell me your pen?
Yeah, I will. A lot of people don't like gel pens because they leak, but this pen has a neat thing that you can push at the top, which retracts the point, so you can put it in your pocket, it won't leak. It has a nice little rubbery thing where your fingers go so they don't get tired. And it's blue, which stands out on a white page very nicely. It will even stand out on a cream colored page. And the nice thing is that it's kind of clear here, so you can see the ink level as it goes down. When it gets down to where the rubber thing is for your fingers, you know that you're just about out of ink, so you are able to replace it before you run out and you're not stuck sometime having to sign something that you can't sign. It also has a nice little clip that you can put in your pocket or clip it onto your clothes so that it doesn't get lost. Would you like my pen?
I want it right now. Yeah, it's great. No, you picked out like some of the great characteristics of your pen, and that's all this exercise is supposed to do. So when it comes to your book, how are you going to make that stand out? Um, and sometimes it's like we're put on the spot. We want to, and it's like, what do I say about my book? Well, think of those positive things. You don't always have to come up with plot details either. Sometimes we get so focused on regurgitating the plot. What about short chapters? Readers love short chapters, especially in the thriller, action, adventure, even the romance genre, because the theory is that, and I've had readers tell me this, is it kept them reading because they'd look ahead a little bit and be like, oh, this chapter's short. I'll get through one more chapter, one more chapter. So if you have short chapters, just like, hey, people said they love the short chapters about this book. Do you have chapter names? Because people like chapter names now. Depending on the genre, not all genres work with chapter names, but I always have interesting names for my chapters. I have audiobooks, and you can talk about, if you have audiobooks, what was it like to find the narrator? Talk about the narrator of your audiobook. We don't always have to just regurgitate the plot when we're trying to sell our book. Talk about the other interesting things, your dedication, the things in your back matter that might be kind of special. So that's how we relate this to sell me this pen. Sell me your book and try to pick out the most interesting things about it, even the interesting things about the physical copy. Okay. Any questions about merchandising or how to merchandise? We're going to go a little bit more in depth about how to create a really, excuse me, nice table presentation
Well,
if
Megan
you're at an
brought
event.
out, excuse me, Megan brought out some things that would have helped me sell this pen better. Is that
Okay.
I have the key to happiness in my hand because happiness is, of course, the ability to write down your ideas.
Oh, see,
See,
Megan,
that that's so
that's
good,
awesome.
Megan.
Yeah, that's so good. See, something like that. And I would have been like, oh, and that feels like existential. Like, yes, I want that pen, you know? So that's perfect. That's absolutely perfect. Okay, the other part about if you're a retailer, you're not just an island. When we are in the retail business, we also have to network and create a community around our business and reach out to the community. So when you're an author, networking is huge and that can really boost your book sales. Um, so that's what I talk about this. So, why should you do in person events? I know for some introverted people, the thought of doing an in person event and actually interacting with in person is like a little daunting. But honestly, it has the power to generate more revenue. So, if you print on demand some books, you're paying. I mean, if you go through Amazon, I went through Amazon and I think it's like 513 for my book and I'm selling it for 16.99. Well, you're making so much more selling that one book than paying Amazon part and getting some royalties back. So you have the potential, depending on your books and what you're authoring, to generate more revenue. Now, there's a lot of factors into this. You've got to do your research and really vet in-person events, because I've talked to some authors who went to an in-person event and it was very heavily marketed and it was really well attended. But because the booth rental fee or the table fee was like $1,100, they didn't make back that money. So is there a huge cost to these in-person events? That may help you reconsider. But if you go to Author Nation, Superstars, and other book conferences, they do have a way where you can apply to sell your books, and sometimes it's $50. I know at Author Nation, that's what it was. Well, you only need to sell a few books to make back that price. So, and you may network and build and have customers that may purchase later. So, when you're at in-person events too, you're networking, but you're getting feedback in real time. You're kind of seeing are people drawn to your cover before you even have to say anything? Do they pick it up and put it down right away and walk away? You're getting to see how people are interacting physically with your book. And sometimes that's going to give you a lot more data than you would have just featuring it on Amazon and not knowing how many people may click on it and walk away. In an in-person sales event, you have someone's full attention for the most part, but there's no danger of them scrolling right past the Facebook ad that you're spending so much money to put out there. You really can talk to people. And paperbacks are still the most popular. And I did check on this, and it's still true. Paperback and hardcover still make up most of the ways that consumers are buying books. So, according to the Association of American Publishers, this is 2024, and I presented this in 2025, but I looked it back up and it's still pretty close to these percentages. So, paperback 36%, hardcover 36%. Ebooks only 10% of the market. And I've just talked to so many authors, that's all they're selling is ebook. But we've got to think too, post-COVID world, a lot of people still working from home on their computer as authors. Like, I'm on my computer all day, between the podcast, between writing, between working on all the marketing for our brick and mortar stores. So I don't want to read a book on a screen. I want the physical paperback. I want to open up and smell the book and feel it in my hands. And I do dog ear the pages, although people don't like that. But I like to feel like the book is used and it's mine. And then I can go back and see where I kind of stopped. But that is still the most popular. So you should try to harness your paperbacks and making those a great piece of your sales. Um, oh, I don't want to share this anymore. So this was last year, and it's books that I'm currently refurbishing. So I don't have current sales data. But the bottom line is I made way more selling my books in person than I did selling online in 1 year. So um,
Yeah,
here's
let's
some,
talk about approaching the booksellers. I
yeah,
love this
yeah,
part.
yes. So I'm going to give you, but this is how I was as a book buyer. Everyone is different. So the most important thing I can convey to you is do your research before you approach someone. Um, so I can speak to my experience and the experience of what I learned from what has gotten me more yeses in bookstores, but understand everyone is different. So do your research. And part of that means is we're largely a tourism business, okay? So our season, because we rely on tourism, for Colorado, it's different for everyone. For Colorado and sort of those Western, Midwestern states, summer when everyone's out, the road trip states. And so people come to us, the huge parts are like March, October. Those are our busiest times. It's where people travel the most. So when we buy, I'm buying January, February. to get product in for our busy season. In Arizona, where I currently live, it's the opposite because it's so hot in the summer, right? So the summer is the slow part. The busy part is like October when it starts getting cool to May. So when people are buying, they're probably like doing inventory in the summer, doing buys in the summer, and getting product in. So, and why does that matter? Well, if you approach me as a book buyer and like after Labor Day, after our season is over, I'm not gonna, I'm probably gonna put it in a file and not think about it because you've missed our entire season. So it's not gonna help us. So that's part of the research that you need to do is like you can tell like which wherever the store is you want to get into, figure out like is it a tourism place? Is it, local shoppers? Is it seasonal? And that'll give you some information about how to approach the bookstore. What I try to do is insist that you build a connection first. Be a patron first. Because since when I went into that bookstore and it always responded to me when someone bought something for me, and then we got into a conversation about, oh, yeah, I'm an author too. I was already so engaged and appreciative of them. And I'm not saying something big. You could spend $5 and buy a coffee mug from us, and it's still, we appreciate it, and it still opens the store. I'm not saying you have to make a big purchase. I'm not advocating you go out and spend money, but you're going to open some doors if you go into a bookstore and purchase a book and start a conversation that way because they're kind of distracted too because they're ringing up something you bought. And if you say then, hey, do you ever feature local authors? You've got their undivided attention because you're buying something. Buy a bookmark. It doesn't have to be big, but it's just like a way your foot's already in that door and you can get some information that way. Um, so go in a few times, and then that's going to tell you the layout of the store, how they do things. Have you talked to the owner because they're running things? That's going to tell you they're kind of busy. Is there other people who are helping that you can get information from? Kind of do some recon where you want to be because that always got more yeses from me as a book buyer. If I recognized someone, if I saw them and they came in and we already had a conversation versus someone who just stopped in, I'm totally busy and they're cold calling and they just want to sell their book. I wasn't dialed in. And that's why, too, it's always best if you can call and set up an appointment or leave something behind and have that person call at your leisure. But when you just pop in and expect to sell something, that's going to get you no's more often because that person's not ready for you. That's at least for me. I never responded to cold calling and pop-ins. I really didn't because I also had the pick of the litter. I had so many people that I wasn't desperate for merchandise. So it was just no for me when someone would approach me and just say, hey, can I sell my book to you? And I'd be like, I'm sorry, no, I'm not even in the headspace to buy something. I'm like doing a million different things. The other thing that I think is really helpful is if you create a press kit. Sorry, I'm losing my voice because I recorded a long podcast episode this morning. And I'm in Arizona. It's so dry here. So I really apologize. But what you want to do is maybe you've started the conversation, but the person you need to talk to is not there, or they really insist on appointments, or they just have sort of a front line so that people don't constantly bother them with merchandise. Create something that you can leave behind, whether that is actually a physical book or something like this. So if I saw this sitting on my desk, remember it's colorful, right? It's got colors, script, easy to read, visuals, not too many words, but just the bullet points of the information you're trying to convey. You're creating a whole mood with something like this. And excuse me, it's a whole mood of who you are, what your brand is. I'm so sorry, I can't stop coughing. But this is something like this is going to stand out so much more on someone's desk than just a small business card. And so keeping this press kit is going to help you. It would be a yes for me. I would definitely call this person back because it doesn't have to look like this, but it's just like who you are on paper, but make it look professional. Like you kind of spent time on it and have these quick facts, just maybe a review in there, something that I can just like, wow, this looks like really professional. I really want to work with this person. Because what was also a no for me was when someone just didn't feel organized or professional. Someone who would come in and say, how much would you sell this for? And honestly, I don't have time. You kind of have to have that stuff set up in the beginning. So I have another activity while I gather myself. So if you were a bookstore, like pretend like everything you are and you write is an actual physical bookstore. What would that look like? What would it feel like? What would it smell like? What are the colors? Can anyone tell me what their bookstore would be? That's another thing to think about.
I know that when I do in-person events, I have little they're like plate holders or something that
Hmm.
I can stand my book up
Hmm.
so that people can see the cover. And in front of that, I will then put um like two or three books in a stack so that they can also see the book blurb.
Right. So I do this exercise because it helps you create a mood for your sales table. And that's what I am trying to convey here. Like building your in person network is just as important as your online one. You got to put yourself out there in the community, whether it's approaching any bookstores or getting your friends to meet up for your local brewery or seeing if the local bookstore that carries your book will host your book signing. If you have a new book coming out, yes, you should celebrate with the book signing. So these are some of the tips to when you're creating your table. Again, like you're conveying a mood of who you are. But you want to have a table like greet anyone walking by, but like also don't pounce on everyone. Something to think about, like what swag do you have to offer guests? How do you make your table interactive? A friend of mine was selling, she had little tea packets made because she featured like there's tea in one of her stories. Because I'm writing romance during wedding season, I had wedding favors made. So like little mints with the couple and the date on it, little Hershey's kisses, things that I could give away. Chocolate, everyone wants chocolate. Not everyone, but people rarely turn down something sweet to eat because they're walking around and they want something. And so those are really like non-expensive things you can have printed at like Zazzle and things like this, and other places like that. But you want your table to be an experience, and that's why I wanted you to picture yourself as a bookstore. So probably because I'm writing romance, if you walked in my bookstore, it'd actually be bright and cheerful. It just have flowers everywhere. It would smell like you're walking through an English garden. I want you to feel that way. And then I just want you to have like a romantic experience when you're walking through my bookstore, if I was a bookstore. But I also want to convey that when you're walking by my table at an in person event. So the one thing is, I've also hosted author events at our store. And if the table doesn't look full, and there's all kinds of tricks. Say you only have two books, there's still different tricks where you can make layers, like you're saying, Paula, like putting your blurb out, putting a sign up for your newsletter. There's other ways you can fill the table, even if you don't have many books out yet. Because what I've noticed when I've hosted book events and author signings with multiple authors, unfortunately, the person who just showed up with one book and he was laying it flat, he wasn't even laying it up where people could see it. He was sitting there, he was on his phone. He didn't sell one book that day. The person across from him, who had colors and different like bookmarks and different things, and was standing up and greeting people, sold like 25 books because the table looked inviting. So it's something to think about too. If you don't have much to offer, it's better to wait on some of those events until you do. Don't put all your books out at once. Don't, if you have a big pile of books, put out two and then an easel and one sitting up, or even one, because someone's like, oh, they only have one book left. You want to always create urgency when you're selling. If people say you have a huge stack, they may keep walking around and be like, oh, there's plenty, I'll come back. And they may forget. So don't put everything out all at once. Just make sure they're enticed to shop. I had this out just on like little cards. And then something to think about, like, what are your favorite lines of the book? Put it on a bookmark. This was one that I wrote. In some of my books, and I just had them on little bookmarks and had them on little cards that I gave out with like who said it and which book it was from. And there's all kinds of things that you can do to get people to fill your table and then get people excited. So, but yeah, that was the last. If people had time to think about it, anyone want to answer? If you were a bookstore, what would your bookstore be?
We have here dark, earthy tones, comfy, pensive. That Megan would like that. Megan also said there's a bookstore along the canal in Venice that have literally bridges and walls of books.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
When you're
I
put,
like what you said about don't put everything out at once. A person that there were four of us authors that would do this event every year. It was a Christmas event. And this one author, the minute she got there, she would always put a pile of about 25 or 30 books. Like she's ready for a book signing, and she never sold very many. I would put, two out here, two of each of my books out. And the person who sat next to her would usually have just two or three of, in a pile. Always sold a lot more.
Mhm. Because it's subliminal messaging, because you're trying to say indirectly, oh, I better buy this book before it's gone. And even if you keep sneaking one out, people won't notice. But a big pile, that's just sales and merchandising 101. You just
Yeah,
never stock the shelf full. You
right.
just
A big
always
pile
want
means nobody's buying.
to.
She has all
Yeah,
these books that nobody wants.
right. Yeah. It just doesn't create urgency. So I'm so sorry I had a coughing fit through the last thing, but does anyone have any questions or anything anyone wants me to go back and touch on? Um,
You've really
anything?
covered this very extensively, but we'll give it a moment to see if anybody either raises their hand or puts something in the chat. Thank you very much for this presentation, Angela. This is great information. And I put in the chat a while back, Google, excuse me, there's a train going by. I put in Google, quote unquote, the meaning of color. I did that a few
Mhm.
years ago, and I think I got like a 5-page report
Hmm.
of all these different colors and all the different meanings and all the different shades of that color, how those
Hmm.
have different meanings. So
Yep.
that has guided me a lot on colors for my website, colors for my covers, and
And
just
sometimes, if you want to really be on trend, so there's a company called Pantone, and there's always the Pantone color of the year. Google that. And it starts, you think it doesn't relate to you, but it starts on the Paris runways almost a year in advance. And then it trickles down to Walmart. It trickles down to Target. It will come out in displays, home displays at Target. It will be on the front, if you walk into a clothing store, that color, whatever the color of the year is, that's front and center. It'll be in home decor trends. And it doesn't always totally relate to your books because truly, whatever your book genre is, you need to associate that with the color that means the same thing. But if you're doing branding, if you're doing your press kit, subliminally, you might want to figure out what the color, that cool color, the in color that everyone's seeing as like popular and fashionable, and put that on your business card.
okay. So
And
Google what I'll put it in the chat.
it's Pantone color of the year.
Pantone,
Uh,
Pantone
let's see.
color of the year. Okay.
There it is. It's a design company, so Pantone right here.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
so color of the year for 2026. I think it's this purple, is it? Oh, well, it's this color. It's called Cloud Dancer.
Oh,
They got a little flack
blah.
for that. I know.
Blah.
Yeah, but it's
But that
actually
can always be like a background color.
right. It's speaking to trends. So trends right now in design is very neutral. So that's why Cloud Dancer. But this was the Mocha Mousse was the color last year, and you'll see that color everywhere. Um, I love this color, Peach Fuzz, and that color was literally everywhere. And you almost don't even notice it if you don't know it's happening. You're just kind of seeing it. But understanding that there's a whole company that puts out the color of the year, which directs everything in fashion and home decor. That's how you know how important understanding the color wheel, what colors go together. Because I've seen some book covers that are either pitched to me to have in the store and the colors were wrong. I didn't even look at I did not look at the title because I was so turned off by the color. And so it's that first way to get people to you, conveying color, a feeling, you know with color. And that's why understanding color theory and the color wheel is so important for your business, for your website, for all the feelings you want to convey. So
Okay.
yeah.
Well, thank you so much for this information.
Yeah.